Hello, School Transportation Nation. Welcome back to the podcast. I am Tony Corpin, publisher of School Transportation News, and we are very excited to have you this week. This podcast episode is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. We have a tech tip from our friends at the App Garden and also a special message from Liquid Spring. In just a few minutes, Mr. Ryan Gray, editor-in-chief of STN, is going to give us the latest news and breakdown, and I'll be talking with Corey Muirhead, executive vice president at Logan Bus Company. This week, I'm going to kick it off with our tech tip brought to you by App Garden, a leading provider in K-12 software and school bus routing solutions. Last minute call outs, staff shortages, mechanical issues can leave your district scrambling to find a substitute driver. The travel tracker for routing provides an easy-to-use routing consolidation feature built to automatically access current routes and combine buses effectively and efficiently. Easily produce new route sheets for drivers, and through their integrated tablet feature, deliver turn-by-turn directions through voice prompt. Learn more about Travel Tracker for routing at app-garden.com/routing. That's app-garden.com/routing. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ryan Gray for the latest headlines this week.
Thanks, Tony. Well, a scary situation occurred last week in Columbia, South Carolina, when an Army trainee went AWOL from Fort Jackson and boarded a Richmond County school bus armed with a rifle. Now, it was not loaded, thankfully. That was later confirmed by Base Commander Milford Beagle Jr., but 18 students and the bus driver were on board when this trainee forced his way on, apparently. They were allowed to leave the bus a short time later, and the suspect was soon arrested. But it was a stark reminder of the diligence needed around school bus stops. Check out Associate Editor Taylor Hannon's article over at stnonline.com. As for COVID-19, the big news last week was that children ages 12 to 15 will soon be eligible to receive vaccines. Meanwhile, the Biden administration said the goal is to now vaccinate 70% of adults by July 4th. With tens of thousands of pharmacies now offering walk-in appointments. It's an effort to speed up vaccination rates, which have slowed over the past several weeks. Still, so far, about half of adults have received at least one shot. And school bus contractors received some welcome news last week as the U.S. Department of the Treasury finally released details on the CERTS Act grant program and the $2 billion in relief funds. You can head over to stnonline.com to get all the details on that as well. And last but not least, the electric buzz last week centered on the Lion Electric Company's announcement that is now public. And it also chose Joliet, Illinois as the site of its 900,000 square foot manufacturing plant. Meanwhile, Thomas Built Buses and Proterra delivered its 50th Julie Electric Safety Liner C2 school bus. And Raphael Warnock, the senator out of Georgia, visited Bluebird for an electric bus ride and drive. Warnock, of course, is co-sponsoring the Clean Commute for Kids Act introduced last month that would provide $25 billion over the next 10 years to replace older diesel buses with EVs. It's back to you, Tony.
Thanks, Ryan, for that update. Really interesting headlines this week. Also, guys, let's talk about going green. How does your school district transportation operation think about reducing its carbon footprint, reducing its emissions? One way to be more efficient is in your routing. That's where TransFinder comes in. Its award-winning Route Finder Plus software solution is a champ when it comes to providing the safest and most efficient bus route on the market. TransFinder has helped thousands of schools from coast to coast cut their fuel costs significantly by traveling fewer miles. Fewer miles and less fuel means a better environment for us all. TransFinder is your efficiency finder. Call them at 800-373-3609 or email marketing@transfinder.com to see how you can go green and save some green too. Don't forget to write STN podcast in the subject line and you will win something special from our friends at TransFinder. All right, guys, without further ado, we have our special guest this week on the School Transportation Nation, Mr. Corey Muirhead, Executive VP over there at Logan Bus in New York. He also has the privilege of being the New York State Contractor Association president as well. Corey, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Tony. Thank you very much for having me again.
Awesome. Well, Corey is a expecting new dad. He's going to jump into that parenthood thing. Got a little boy on the way. School busing and children are kind of ingrained in Corey. He's looking forward to those moments. So we're real excited for him. And he's also looking to the future. Corey, you want to talk a little bit about how Logan Bus is looking at kind of EV, alternative energy? Maybe give us some background on Logan Bus. Like, what is your fleet makeup? What do you cover? Volume, students, all that kind of good stuff.
Sure, no problem. So yeah, ironically enough, my kid is going to be born on probably the first day of school. So I got to get better at planning that next time. But that's kind of, beautiful irony there. So very excited. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm very passionate about this industry. So having a child of my own, I really want to make sure that we put the safest and most reliable buses on the road. So yeah, Logan's comprised of about 1,500 vans, mini wagons, of course, and then another 1,000 Type C school buses. And we operate in the 5 boroughs in Nassau County, just diesel and gas right now. But I'm happy to announce that we're going to have our first electric school bus on the road on June 3rd. We're going to do a big event. All my charging infrastructure and electric infrastructure is built already. I'm doing it out of my Brooklyn location, and I'm extremely excited. I've teamed up with some phenomenal stakeholders who have really held my hand through this entire process. And to be quite honest, they presented me with the turnkey solution here. So I have infrastructure built for 5 electric school buses, and 1 is going on the road in June. We're hoping that the rest will be built by September. So we're really excited. I teamed up with Amply Power, Rhombus, C-Power, and I got the grant from NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. But I'm approaching this in a little different way. And I'm excited that I teamed up with Unique Electric Solutions because they provide fleet managers like myself with the viable option of repowering vehicles. So we all know that electric school buses right now are extremely, I'll call it cost prohibitive. And I don't want the OEMs to get mad at me because I'm friends with all of them. But it's just 3.5 times the price of a regular diesel school bus right now. Those are just facts. There's nothing I could do about that. I call them all the time and tell them to lower their prices. They can't. They got to call the battery companies to lower their prices. So it trickles down. But anyway, for me, I understand the electric craze. I understand the sustainability and where we want to get to and clean air. So how I think we get there quicker is a combination of buying new, but also repowering old diesels and getting them off the road. The cost is significantly cheaper. The grant money, whether you buy new or repower, so long as it is electric, is still there. So for me, I took a look at this, when I wanted to go electric, and I said, what's the biggest impact I can have as the largest contractor in New York City, as Logan being one of the largest contractors in the state and nation? What can we really do, and what can we look at that people will say, hey, you know what? Good for them, and that's a pretty good idea. Let's take a look at that ourselves. So, like I said, I was brought a turnkey solution with a ton of stakeholders, with a ton of experts, and I found that the most cost economic, as well as the biggest bang for my buck, as well as the most number of vehicles I could do at once, would be to repower these vehicles. So we applied for the grant with NYSERDA, and I'm happy to say that we have a grant for 5 repowers, and I'll be having 5 electric vehicles on the road in 2021. And that's extremely exciting for our industry. And it's very exciting for New York City because I will be the first private contractor to have an electric school bus on the road.
So Corey, being in New York City, the big question in my mind is land, right? Like to have EV, one of the bigger parts of the conversation is all the planning. And you kind of touched on it, right? Like it's like finding the right partners, getting the infrastructure. What solutions do you choose? Like, okay, so you talk about repower. Can you share a little more about that with the audience? Like, because there's two types of charging, right? So there's like DC fast charging. There's kind of more of the standard chargers. Give me a sense, like, are you investing in the fast chargers? Are you seeing like opportunity charging during the day? Being in the city, you're very dense. Like, are they coming back to the yard? How are you like visualizing the actual buses in live activity, dropping kids off, New York traffic? What does that kind of feel like? What are you envisioning that to be?
Yeah, sure. So that's a question that has 5 tentacles. So it's quite a robust question there. So let me try and hit all the points there. So yeah, land's finite, and especially in New York City, they're not making any more of it. You look at our yards, and every contractor around here parks them in like sardines. The infrastructure is certainly going to be a challenge. I'm putting 5 chargers in, and I've lost spots because of that. So, completely going electric, the infrastructure is a challenge, and the way to park and the way to charge your vehicles is something that we still need to study significantly. So that's a good point to bring up. The second part of that is, I'm doing a fast charge. I teamed up with Rhombus, and they have my EV charging stations are both at level 2 and level 3. So that's good. And then, we have additional capabilities to do vehicle to grid. And now, please keep in mind, I'm a novice at this. So I've been going back to school learning this a lot. So I'm going to give a little crash course here. And I hope that my partners here say I do a good job. But from my understanding, level 2 is like the overnight charging. And then they're done during the rest hours of the fleet. And then the level 3 are the fast charging. So the charging stations that I put in there have level 2 and level 3 capabilities. And then, what you hit on something else that was important. I am trying to maximize the potential of distributed energy resources. So I will be pushing electric back to the grid. I will be doing vehicle to grid. I will be, as I team up with Amply Power, they're really there to optimize charging efficiencies for me and things like that. And, the Amply business model is to charge management in a real time. So I am looking at this from all angles because this is going to be very much a learning curve. And I want to truly put a microscope to every part of this learning curve, whether it be the building of the vehicles, whether it be the charging, whether it be the infrastructure. I'm going to be micromanaging all of that, and I'm excited for that. And now the last part of your question, talking about what a repower is basically you take a diesel bus and you put in a advanced EV drivetrain, so now it's offering like a new vehicle format. It's taking the chassis and installing, and Unique Electric Solutions, a couple of other companies do this, but they take the chassis and they install their complete drivetrain, and it becomes an electric vehicle.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, your mayor there in New York City dropped the bomb saying that, hey, he wants all school buses to be electric by 2035. I know he's kind of on, a short term there. He's going out of office probably in the next 8-9 months. But I mean, that's a pretty big statement to make. New York is kind of trying to, is getting some headlines, planting the flag. As an operator, we look at that holistically and say, okay, is that attainable? Right? Like that's a great goal to aim for, but what's it going to take to get there? What's the funding that's going to be needed? What's the land that's going to be needed, right? How are you supposed to operate in those environments? So, and then also we're obviously clearly coming out of COVID, and many contractors in New York State, I'm sure, are still waiting with bated breath for the CERTS Act money to be kind of invested into their operations with all the losses that have taken place. So like, that's a lot to digest. I mean, if I'm a school bus operator, that for me, I'm just kind of like, whoa, where do we go from here? So I'd love to kind of get your feedback. Obviously, you're representing the New York Contractors Association, so I'm sure you have some thoughts on the CERTS Act, as well as kind of Mayor de Blasio's announcement. Take either one of those and kind of run with it. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with the de Blasio announcement, and then I'll get into the CERTS Act. So they do tie in together, money, of course. The mayor is a friend, and I applaud him. He's been pretty heavily invested in electrifying school buses for 3-4 years now. We've had conversations, so this was no surprise to me. The number of vehicles was certainly a surprise to me, and the expeditious timeline that he put in is a surprise. And respectfully, I think that the timeline he put is extremely challenging for the multitude of reasons that you already listed. Whether it be land, whether it be infrastructure, and of course, whether it be funding. Now, New York City said that they wanted to do it for the fleet that they are operating now. So they've made a commitment there, but it's going to be challenging for them to get the private contractors to agree to that without a contract modification and or any more money coming into that contract. So, and I'll go back to what I said at the beginning of this, and my friends are going to laugh, but this is a call to the OEMs and to the battery companies to shave those prices down. So because you got the biggest city in America that wants to go fully electric. So, go make those prices the right price point so people could get out there and the city could get out there and buy them. But, that's being sarcastic, but seriously, it's going to be a challenge. And everybody wants to do this, and we have to do this the right way. But this isn't just a overnight thing where you go from diesel for 10,000 buses and then you go to electric. There's so many little things, and it's such a cumbersome process that we have to take this step by step. Now that I'm having a kid, I can say this, we're going to take baby steps, right? So we're going to make sure that we have the infrastructure. We're going to make sure that the vehicles on the New York City streets can run and they can operate in the way that they're supposed to. We're going to make sure that they go through the crazy climate changes of New York, and we're going to see that the energy put forward in conceptual ideas can actually be a proof of concept, right? So I applaud him. I think it's great. They have some electric vehicles that they're putting on the road as well that are being ran through contractors, but I think that the timeline that they gave themselves is extremely challenging. So with that being said, that's their prerogative, and that's what they would like to do for the next couple of years. Now, here's the issue there is that many of the private contractors operating in New York City have existing agreements and contracts that wouldn't require them to put on additional electric vehicles. At the same time, they're waiting for so much money, whether it be from the city or the state or the CERTS Act and stuff like that, that quite frankly, a lot of the contractors I speak to are more worried about making sure that their businesses survive and continue to survive and that they're going to be open for next September than electrification right now. And that's just the harsh reality. The CERTS Act is certainly challenging. The city agreements that we have are certainly challenging in terms of getting paid in a timely fashion. And as we continue to operate, the cash flow continues to dwindle. So outside of New York City as well, we're still fighting / educating the state on what we need from state aid funding and the settlement agreements that we negotiated with our school districts that had clawback provisions on. Because where we're at right now and what's the challenging part of this summer is some of these agreements say that the school districts can take back money that they already paid you in their settlement. Now, how are you going to do that? You spent that money to keep your drivers or pay for their health insurance or make sure that your maintenance operations stayed open in the summer so that all of your buses were DOT inspected so that they were in compliance so that they could run in September. So the money was not put into our pockets and said, hey, we're made whole. Absolutely not. That money came in. The second it came in, it was spent to sustain and persevere the school bus industry. So I think people need to realize that a little bit more. And I think that we are certainly not out of the woods of what is going on with the pandemic and the effect on not being paid for months had on the industry. So everyone's excited about electric. Most of the contractors that I speak to are in some form or fashion discussing electrifying parts of their fleet, but they are certainly more focused and prioritizing making sure their companies survive this year again, and whatever happens with the CERTS money and the money that they're owed from their school districts, when that will come in so that they could, use it to continue to operate. That's where priority number one lies.
So speaking of operating, obviously, here in California, I'm starting to see a lot more school buses on the road. I mean, some states, they've been fully running. New York, you guys are back up and running with school. What does that look like, Logan Bus? What percentage of your fleet is running? Are you 100%? Are schools fully back open? And then for the rest of the state, with respect to other contractors, and, are they able to fulfill on the contracts? Or are we seeing anything kind of happening in the state that would be unusual?
So thankfully, Logan's running at about 80, 85%. The challenging part is that we're not running any field trips or athletics or after school activities, which is, something that's extremely a big part of our revenue model. So it's been challenging there, but we are just happy that we're getting kids to and from school. All of our special needs children, all our special education, transportation is running. General education has kind of been slowly coming back. We've heard from the city that they want to run a full summer operation and that September is supposed to be 100% a go. So we're excited for that. Once again, though, AM and PM to and from school is great, but we need to, and what I've spoken to everybody amongst the state, from Western New York to upstate to downstate, is we need field trips, athletics, and charters to come back. That's an extremely important part of our business model. So we're excited that we're running. We're happy that we're back in business. We're happy that everyone is continuing to operate their school districts and kids are getting to school, but we're not out of the weeds yet, like I said before, and we need it to go full-fledged. We are hearing that September, the governor came out and said the end of May is going to be a mass reopening. The mayor came out and said that July 19th, the city's going to basically, quote unquote, go back to normal, unquote. So we're excited. We're extremely excited. And we think that this summer is going to be a very big summer. And we hope that September next year is going to be fully operational with the field trips and with the athletics. And we're hoping that drivers come back to work, because we're still having an extremely difficult time getting drivers back to the companies because of the unemployment benefits and just because of the unknown of the industry. I think there's a myriad of problems that we're having with attracting talent and attracting drivers. And I think that when they see that they can make the hours again and that this could be a profession rather than, quote unquote, a little bit of part-time, I think that we'll start to see some drivers come back.
Hey, thanks a lot, Corey, for jumping on the podcast today, really providing some great information about New York. Very knowledgeable, super excited about EV, where everything is headed with you guys. Congratulations again, incoming new little boy. So excited for you and your wife. Corey's a good friend, so we thank him for being with us and sharing his time with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tony. Thank you for always giving me a platform. Thank you for always being a good friend. And thank you for everything that STN does. I sat on your Green Bus Summit a couple weeks ago, and it was extremely informational. So once again, like I said, thank you for everything you guys do for the industry.
Again, special thanks to Corey for providing all those great perspectives. And hey guys, guess what? We've got a school bus tip for you this week, brought to you by Liquid Spring, the undisputed leader in smart suspension technology and performance. Unlike other suspension systems that make you choose between improved ride quality and more responsive handling, with Liquid Spring's patented Class platform, you get the best of both worlds. Liquid Spring Smart technology is constantly monitoring and responding to the road conditions as well as driver inputs to provide the best experience possible to drivers and riders alike. Check out Liquid Spring online at liquidspring.com or through social media at Liquid Spring to learn more how and when you can test drive a vehicle and experience Liquid Spring for yourself. Accessibility, mobility, tranquility. That's Liquid Spring's promise. Learn more at liquidspring.com. That's liquidspring.com. All right, special thanks to Ryan Gray, Corey Muirhead for jumping on the podcast today. We appreciate you both. Shout out to our sponsors, TransFinder, Liquid Spring, and App Garden. We appreciate you all for listening. Subscribe, stream, review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, stnpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Visit stnonline.com for the latest news, analysis on everything that we have in the school transportation industry. Also, don't forget to sign up for the upcoming Bus Technology Summit. It's free, June 28th through the 30th, Bus Tech Summit. Also, all our in-person conferences are coming up, stnexpo.com. Be sure to check that out. Super excited to have you guys listening. We love you, listeners. We'll see you next week.